Hi everybody, this is Dr. Newmark and this is your week 1 highlights video for English 319. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the highlights. I'm going to try to generally keep these videos pretty short, so we'll see how it goes. First of all, let's review some of the key themes from Carol Barnum's Usability Testing Essentials, chapters 1 through 3. So first of all, I want you to ask yourself, and perhaps pause the video to do so, what is usability? Next, do you know what a usability test is? So these are foundational concepts for this class, and we've gotten going with them right from the start. First of all, it's important for us to remind ourselves of the International Standards Organization definition of usability. That statement says, usability is the extent to which a product can be used by specific users to achieve specific goals with effectiveness, efficiency, and satisfaction in a specified context of use. So how do we observe users using products in order to measure usability? I know that many of you have probably interacted with apps or online forms or even products, or perhaps even the user interface of your car's air conditioning system, for example, that have frustrated you. I know this happens to everybody on a somewhat regular basis. So sometimes users aren't the source or the focus of a design approach. They come second, which is not what we want to foreground in this class. Users come first. The product is the result of the user's experience with a design approach, and ultimately then the product is suited to the user's needs. As you might imagine, historically, certain users have been marginalized when it has come to testing. And we, in this class, want to make sure that all target users for a particular document, app, interface, or product are central to the design process, so the product serves everyone equally. So what does all this talk about usability and usability testing have to do with technical communication? Of course, since I am a member of the technical and professional communication teaching cohort here at UNM, this is very important to me. We have a minor and a certificate in TPC at UNM, and so you might wonder, why do we have a class in usability and user-centered design? So thinking about document design can help us, especially when we think about designing a form before it is going to be used, formative testing, or after it has been finished, summative testing. In my experience, I find that involving users along the way when you're designing something helps to avoid eventual user frustrations ultimately, so that you might only suss out during summative testing after the fact. So we're going to look at some examples throughout the semester, but right now let's look at this web form. I know you can't see it very well, and I will share the link to this in the comments section of this video. So let's look at this badly designed form. This is actually from a website that aggregates badly designed documents and web forms. So this is where a writer or designer might have improved many aspects of the user's experience. So how might we test the usability of this form? For example, there are small studies and there are large studies. So your book gives you details about both. If you're not familiar with what this means, I recommend that you pause the video and go back and look for that information in the book. So one of the things that is frustrating about this form is that it's expansive. It has small text boxes and a lot of white space. It might have been a better design approach to break this content up across several different screens so that the user is walked through different steps in a process rather than being overwhelmed by a form in which they might generate lots of different errors. So using the content from chapter 2, I want you to think about why and how you might test a web form like the one I showed on the previous slide. So the chapter describes testing in a usability lab and offers an overview of some of the kinds of equipment these site-specific and mobile labs might have. But what if you don't have a lab? We are not using a usability lab in this class, so what do? Can we do field testing? At New Mexico Tech, for example, where I was before coming to UNM, we did have a usability lab. But in fact, there are so many more robust tools and mobile-friendly tools that have become operational in the last decade that having an explicit lab might not actually be necessary. They can be great, but they're not necessary. So one cool thing to do, which I'm sure many of us will do this semester, is use the miracle of Zoom to perform moderated remote tests. I want everyone to take a moment after watching this video to read one blog post about performing user research using Zoom. So I have put the URL to a website that I found really helpful and user-friendly in the comments of this YouTube video. So I'd like you to visit that webpage and read about remote usability testing using Zoom. So one last thing. We've discussed testing, but what about user-centered design? Chapter 3 discusses this a bit. So what are some tools for developing with users in mind? As I said before, if that web form had been perhaps better designed with actual users, the actual cohort that would be interacting with that form in mind, perhaps it wouldn't have been designed the way that it was. So once you've been rigorous with designing with users in mind, how do you begin thinking about testing your output? So I talked about field testing and lab-based testing, on-site testing, but are there other ways to test? Indeed there are. So there's a phrase in your book that is used, expert review, but there's another term for that. I want you to pause the video if you don't have it at top of mind and look at how Barnum discusses expert review. So thanks for watching this week's video. This is the first one of many that will be coming in the future. In these videos, I'll just go over some of the main highlights and things that I want you to be sure that you know all about. So I look forward to recording the next one next week.